Everyone tells you that if you really love someone, you fight for them, that you prove it, you insist, you do whatever it takes to make them stay. Movies, songs, even your closest friends repeat the same line: don't give up, keep trying, make them notice you. But what if that advice is exactly what's draining your power? What if chasing them is what's pushing them further away? Here's the one thing almost nobody dares to try. The most powerful way to win back respect and attention isn't speaking louder. It's going completely silent. What you're about to discover flips your instincts upside down. Your gut tells you to act. That one more message could fix everything, but the psychology of desire runs the opposite direction. The easier you are to reach, the less interesting you become. The human mind is wired to chase what feels scarce and ignore what feels guaranteed. So every time you text, call, or beg for a sign, you're actually shrinking your own impact on their life, and that's exactly where the cycle of frustration that's been eating you alive begins. This isn't about explaining your feelings better or writing the perfect message so they finally understand your worth. This is something far more radical. How to stop all contact, strategically. How to build a silence so loud they can't tune it out. How to become the question that keeps them up at night, instead of the answer that's always available. This isn't manipulation. It's not a game to hurt them or get revenge. It's a power reset. It's the conscious decision to take your dignity back and stop living on standby for someone who might not even be thinking about you right now. It's daring to let go of the rope even when letting go feels like falling. Because once you do, you find out the ground was there the whole time, and you find something else too. Your silence doesn't erase them from your life. It gives you back to yourself. Through this video, you'll understand why no contact isn't passivity. It's pure action. Why it's the most powerful tool for triggering emotional reactance, that psychological pull that makes people want exactly what they sense they're losing. And most importantly, you'll learn how to use this time to rebuild yourself from the inside, so that when they finally react and come back, you're the one who decides if they still deserve a place in your life. What's coming isn't easy, but it's transformative. If you follow this path, you won't just change how they see you, you'll change how you see yourself. Stay until the end, and you'll walk away with a strength you might not have known you had. So before we start, do one thing for yourself. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. It's the first step toward taking your power back, because what you're about to hear can change the way you handle silence, love, and your own life for good. Some days the world outside keeps moving, but everything inside you stops. You wander through the house with no direction, open the fridge without hunger, sit down to eat, and forget to actually taste anything. Everything feels paused, like life's been reduced to a single thought. When are they going to text back? It's not just waiting for a message, it's the feeling that your worth depends on that confirmation, that flicker of attention that hands you calm for a few minutes. And deep down, you know even if it came, that calm would be so fragile it would shatter at the next silence. It's like your mind is stuck in constant watch mode, scanning every corner for signals. A car sound outside that might be theirs, a notification that makes your heart jump, a post you analyze like it's hiding a secret code. And yet every clue seems to pull you further from the certainty you're chasing. The truth is brutal. Control isn't in your hands anymore. And that's the wound that cuts deepest, because no matter how much effort you pour in, the answer doesn't come when you want it to. The cruelest part is you start negotiating with yourself. You tell yourself you'll text just once more, that there's nothing wrong with asking how they're doing, that maybe this time they'll answer. But the second you give in, you feel like you've betrayed yourself. Because every message you send isn't just a text, it's a transfer of power, a reminder to them that you're still there, still waiting. That cycle wears you down, drains you, and leaves you with less than you started with. Inside, your mind builds excuses to make sense of it all. Maybe they're busy, maybe they didn't see it, maybe they need space. You search for comfort in that story, but really, you're just stretching out the agony. Because the question torturing you isn't whether they'll respond. It's why their silence hurts this much. And that's the root of it. You've handed someone else the keys to your calm, like your own breathing depends on them looking back at you. This is the point where most people break, because acting, pushing, searching, provoking some kind of response feels like the only way out. But it's also the point where something completely different can be born. The possibility of doing nothing, of resisting the urge to chase even while your body shakes with anxiety, of sitting in that emptiness and starting to see that maybe it isn't punishment. It's an invitation. An invitation to take back control of the one thing that's actually yours, your own behavior. What comes next won't be comfortable, because it'll show you how many times you traded your peace for crumbs of attention. But that exact recognition is where the shift starts. Once you see the pattern, you can't keep playing the same game the same way. Something inside you stirs, something that says enough. And even before you've decided what to do next, you already know there's no going back without feeling like you're giving up on yourself. There's a moment when everything stops, not because the message you were waiting for finally arrived, not because something magical happened outside of you. It's internal, a quiet click that suddenly lights up the whole picture. You start seeing the full pattern. It's not a coincidence that the more you insist, the less attention you get. The more you explain yourself, the less they listen. The more you give without being asked, the less they value it. Every act of chasing slowly erases the image they had of you until you become invisible, a fixture, always predictable, always too easy to reach. This moment feels like opening your eyes after a long night. Suddenly you remember every message you sent, just to make sure you hadn't been forgotten. You remember lying awake, staring at the screen, running scenarios, negotiating with yourself over whether to text or not. And you understand the problem was never about saying too much or too little. It's that you put yourself in a position where they never had to try for anything. You showed them you'd always be there, that there was zero risk of losing you, that your presence was infinite and guaranteed. The psychology of desire is merciless. What feels abundant loses value. What feels rare becomes desired. Without realizing it, you made yourself abundant, handing over every thought, every reaction, every minute of your attention. And the human brain, once it knows something is always available, pushes it to the background. That's why your message isn't a priority. That's why your absence goes unnoticed. Not because you're not worth it, but because you stopped being a mystery worth being curious about. This realization can land like a slap, but it's also freeing. Because in that instant, you understand the power was never in pushing harder. It was in stopping. This isn't abandonment, it's a decision. Stoicism in practice teaches that we can't control other people's desires or their timing, but we can choose not to wear ourselves down, chasing something that's consuming us. This is where you discover real self-respect, begins the moment you stop trading your peace for a crumb of attention. If you're recognizing this pattern in yourself right now, there's an ebook by relationship consultant James Bauer that gets into exactly this. It's called What Men Secretly Want. It comes with a bonus audio version too, if you'd rather listen than read. The affiliate link is in the pinned comment if you want to check it out. Here it's not a comfortable conclusion. Everything you learned from movies, songs, and well-meaning friends screams that you should fight, prove, insist. But something deeper starts speaking inside you. The voice that says enough chasing, enough explaining, enough begging for affection. That voice is small at first, almost a whisper, but it's clear. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. You start imagining what it would feel like to pull your energy out of this, to stop checking their last scene, stop watching their stories, stop sending messages that just leave you hanging. The thought alone makes you dizzy, like you're letting go of a rope that's been holding you up. But at the same time, you feel relief, like you can finally breathe after weeks underwater. Fear and peace blend into something strange, because you know taking this step will be hard. But you also know it's necessary. This is the real awakening, realizing that chasing is what's been wearing you down, and that silence isn't punishment, it's recovery. It's the space they need to actually notice your absence. But more than that, it's the space you need to remember who you are. From here, your next move won't be impulsive anymore. It'll be a deliberate decision, born from self-respect instead of desperation. And even with the phone still in your hand, you already feel like something has shifted for good. There's a moment when the internal struggle hits its peak. No dramatic explosion, no shouting, no tears. Just a silence that settles over you like a heavy blanket. You look at your phone, the urge to text feels like fire in your chest, but for the first time, you don't act on it. That tiny gesture, not moving a finger, becomes the most powerful act in this entire story. It doesn't look heroic, but it is. Because it's not just choosing not to text, it's choosing not to hand over your dignity on a plate. This is the real breaking point. Your mind screams that you're risking everything, that if you don't act, you'll lose them forever. But deep down you know you'd already lost them the moment your piece started, depending on their response. So you choose something radical. You choose to walk off the field entirely. Not wait for them to text first, not give it a few days. You shut the noise down completely. Zero contact, no calls, no messages, no sneaking glances at their social media. Just silence. A silence so total it almost hurts to sit inside it. At first it feels like a leap of faith, like jumping without knowing if there's a net underneath. You wonder if they'll even notice your absence, if they'll register that you stopped chasing, if any of it will make a difference. But in that very leap, you discover something essential. You're not doing this for them. You're doing it for you. For the first time in a long time, you're making a decision not to provoke a reaction from someone else, but to take back control of your own inner world. The physical gesture can be simple. Put the phone face down. Turn off notifications. Delete the chat so you're not tempted to reread it for the 100th time. But the emotional gesture is massive. It's a silent vow to never shrink your worth out of fear of being forgotten again. It's the promise that every urge that surfaces will be met with patience, not reaction. In short, it's the birth of your unshakable mind. As the hours pass, the urge to break the silence comes in waves. You catch yourself thinking up excuses, maybe something neutral, something that doesn't sound desperate, something that won't cost you ground. But something inside you has already shifted. That new voice, the one that showed up, the moment everything clicked, reminds you exactly why you made this choice. It reminds you of the price you paid for being endlessly available, and the emptiness you felt every time your message went unanswered. This is where the real Stoic training begins. It's not about suppressing your emotions like they don't exist. It's about learning to observe them without acting on impulse. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you strengthen a muscle that had gone soft from disuse. It hurts, but it also empowers. Because now you're not a boat dragged around by the wind of anxiety. You're the one holding the wheel, deciding where to sail. This is the phase where the first visible shift happens. Your energy stops leaking out in 100 directions and starts gathering around you. You notice your mind quieting down in stretches, your breath going a little deeper. It's as if the act of not acting opens up an inner space where something new can grow. And in that space, a seed of restored dignity takes root, one that, if you protect it, becomes a presence impossible to ignore. This decision to change course isn't the end of the conflict. It's the start of a harder, far more valuable road. Because now the real test begins, holding the silence, resisting the pull, letting the emptiness do its work. What comes next won't be simple, but every day you keep this choice is a quiet declaration of strength, a reminder that you've stopped begging and started choosing yourself. The first hours after the decision feel like unfamiliar territory. Your mind scrambles for something to do, like an animal pacing inside a cage. Every sound from your phone spikes your pulse, even when it's not the notification you're hoping for. There are moments you catch yourself standing in the kitchen with no memory of walking in, like your body's running on a track your mind isn't on. This is emotional withdrawal, the urge to chase the small dopamine hits that used to come from checking, even though they always left you emptier afterward. The first days are the hardest. The silence seems to expand through the house, down the street, even inside your chest. It's an invisible endurance test, a battle no one else can see. You realize the hardest part isn't that they're not texting. It's resisting your own urge to be the one who breaks first. And every time you survive that urge, even if it's just 5 more minutes, it feels like a small win. Not a loud victory, but the first sign you're taking the wheel back. Some people find relief writing down everything they want to say in a notebook, then closing it, getting the weight off their chest without breaking the rule. Others lean on simple rituals, a longer shower than usual, cooking something that takes real attention, sitting outside until the restlessness passes on its own. Each of these is an anchor, a reminder that life isn't just sitting around waiting for a message. And the more you repeat these small acts, the more you start to notice the world keeps turning. that your day has room for more than just anxiety. Your body starts adjusting, little by little. That first night you might sleep badly, checking your phone at 3 a.m., but the second night is already a little easier. You start rediscovering things you'd let slide. Reading a book without checking your phone between pages, cooking while actually hearing your own thoughts, leaving the house without feeling like your phone has to be glued to your hand. Small details, but they mark the start of a quiet rebuild. What's interesting is the early pain starts turning into something else. Yes, the absence still hurts, but now it's mixed with a kind of pride. Every day you hold the no-contact line is proof you can govern yourself. That feeling becomes fuel. If you made it through today, you can make it through tomorrow. Emotional discipline stops being an abstract idea and starts feeling like a muscle that gets stronger with every rep. This phase has its ups and downs too. Some mornings you feel unstoppable. Other days nostalgia hits out of nowhere. Some days you're tempted to check their profile picture, just to confirm they're still out there. But the difference now is you recognize those urges for what they are. Ego traps, automatic impulses that used to run you and that you can now just watch without acting on. That pause between the urge and the action, that's pure gold. Every small win builds a new internal story. You're no longer someone who reacts without thinking. Now you're someone who chooses. And that choice starts generating a strange kind of calm, a calm that doesn't depend on what anyone else does. It's like every minute of silence adds to a savings account of dignity, quietly compounding into something enormous. This is the most fertile ground for real change. The noise has dropped low enough that you start hearing yourself again. You uncover emotions you'd been burying under messages and distraction. You also discover you can survive the discomfort, that anxiety doesn't kill you, that the wait isn't forever. This certainty prepares you for what's coming next. The moment the outside world starts reacting to your silence and the board starts tilting in your favor. At first, it looks like nothing's happening. Days pass with no sign of movement. This is the most deceptive stretch of the road, because your mind starts whispering that your silence isn't landing, that they haven't even noticed. But this is exactly where the shift starts working. Even if you can't see it yet, absence has an incubation period, like a seed underground that shows nothing on the surface until it finally breaks through. Slowly, the first cracks appear. Maybe it's a like on an old post, a view on your story within seconds of posting it. A generic message that doesn't ask anything specific, but feels like testing the water. These small gestures are the start of something. Emotional reactance, that psychological pull that drives people to chase what they sense they've lost. Suddenly, your silence becomes a question they can't answer, a void that forces them to look in the mirror. Meanwhile, you watch without reacting. This is what flips the game. Before, you were the one chasing and they were the one deciding whether to respond. Now, they're the ones feeling the gap, trying to claw back the old dynamic. Every day you hold the line, the balance shifts a little more. They feel the grip they used to have slipping out of their hands, and that discomfort builds quietly into urgency. This part, what's actually happening in his mind while you hold the silence, is exactly what James Bauer breaks down in the What Men Secretly Want ebook. Plus, there's a bonus audio recording that walks through it too. It's the part most advice skips completely. Affiliate links in the pinned comment if it's useful to you. The human mind hates uncertainty. When you were always available, they knew exactly where they had you. There was no mystery. Now they're facing a blank space. They start wondering if you've moved on, if you met someone else, if you forgot about them. This swirl of doubt is the direct result of your strategic absence. No words, no demands, no explanations, and yet you achieve something no speech ever could. You get them generating the very questions they used to ignore. Sometimes the reaction shows up subtly. Sometimes it lands all at once. Maybe they post something clearly designed to catch your eye, a vague caption, a photo that seems to carry a hidden message, or maybe they just send something casual, like nothing ever happened. This is the first real test. Your instinct will want to respond immediately, to feel the relief of reconnecting. But every second you take to decide calmly reinforces your new position. The most powerful part of this process is that it's not just them feeling your absence, your whole world picks up on it too. The The friends who watched you spiral notice you talk about it less, that you've got other things going on, that your energy is pointed back at you. Even how you carry yourself changes, your posture, your walk, the way you hold eye contact. People notice. Your presence becomes magnetic because it's no longer tangled up in anxiety or need. As signals from the other side get more frequent, something curious happens. You stop being desperate to receive them. What used to feel like a prize is now just information. You realize the real shift isn't that they're reacting, it's that you're no longer at the mercy of their reaction. That's the true reversal, not that they're chasing you, but that you've stopped chasing anyone at all. This is the moment the game has fully flipped. They're starting to feel exactly what you felt at the start. The waiting, the doubt, the restlessness. Every day of your silence amplifies their sense of loss. Every minute you don't respond makes your presence more valuable. And through this whole process, without doing anything visible, you become someone impossible to ignore. What comes next is even more transformative, because it's no longer just about how they react. It's about how you use this space to finish rebuilding yourself. The next step isn't celebrating that they're rattled. It's going deeper into your own growth until you become so solid that neither their return nor their silence can shake you. There comes a point where the silence stops feeling like a weight and starts feeling like shelter. What began as unbearable emptiness now becomes sacred space, a place where you can hear yourself with nothing in the way. It's like the noise that used to fill your mind has slowly cleared, and in its place sits a calm you've never felt before. The pain hasn't disappeared completely, but it's changed shape. No longer a desperate scream, more like an ember that warms instead of burns. You start noticing that no contact stops feeling like constant effort. Before, you were counting hours, gritting your teeth through the urge, hunting for distractions just to avoid caving. Now you can go a whole day without feeling that pull to check anything. Your phone goes back to just being a phone. The silence stops being a punishment and turns into a conscious choice. This is where you discover real freedom was never about them coming back. It's about no longer needing them to. Your energy starts redirecting toward you. You make time for things you'd forgotten. Taking care of your body, feeding your mind, reconnecting with friends, learning something new. Every action is a brick in rebuilding your identity. You're no longer the person begging for attention. Now you're someone investing in their own growth. This is what the Stoics meant by living according to virtue, using every circumstance, even pain, to make yourself wiser and harder to knock down. This is where calm authority shows up. That quiet presence that doesn't need to shout to be heard, doesn't need to run to be noticed. You walk differently, talk differently, even think differently. Anxiety stops steering your steps, and in its place comes a quiet clarity. You discover you don't need to react to every stimulus, that not everything deserves a response, that your time and attention are treasures you only spend where they actually matter. The emotions still show up, but now they don't drag you along. You can feel nostalgia without turning it into a 3 a.m. text. You can remember a happy moment without rushing to reopen a door you decided to close. This is the real unshakable mind, not the one that feels nothing, but the one that feels deeply without losing control. Every day you choose to hold the silence reinforces that emotional muscle, until one day it doesn't even feel like effort anymore. It's simply who you are now. The most beautiful part of this transformation is that it doesn't depend on them reacting at all. Even if they never come back, even if they never apologize, your win is already locked in because you've changed from the inside. You've recovered something priceless, the ability to be at peace with yourself. And that peace is magnetic. People feel it, even without knowing why. It's the kind of presence that turns heads, earns respect, and makes others wonder what you did to get that new light in your eyes. In this phase, you start to understand the real goal was never making them feel your absence. It was you feeling your own presence again. This is the quiet rebirth that turns pain into a force that lifts you up. And it's here that the ground gets prepared for the final step, the new equilibrium, the state where you haven't just stopped chasing someone. You've started building a life so full that anyone who wants in has to rise to meet it. At some point, the silence just stops being a project. It's just how you live now. The day arrives without warning. No big announcement, no dramatic gesture, but something in you feels different. You wake up, and the air feels lighter, like you set down a weight you'd been carrying in your chest for weeks. You pick up your phone and look at it without rushing, without that knot in your stomach that used to send you compulsively checking every notification. For the first time in weeks, your peace doesn't depend on what shows up on that screen. This is the first sign you've reached a new equilibrium. Your life starts orbiting you again instead of someone else. This isn't cold indifference, it's recovered health. You've put the one person you can actually control back at the center of your own universe. The change is visible to everyone around you. People who knew you in your anxious phase notice you've stopped speaking from desperation, stopped fishing for comfort in every conversation. Now, you're sharing your plans, your progress, your new goals. Your energy is different, sharper, cleaner. You walk with your spine straight, your eyes steady, your steps sure. This quiet shift has a powerful effect. The people who used to take you for granted now feel like they have to earn their place in your life. This is usually when the strongest reaction from the other side shows up. No more subtle signals. Now it's direct messages, attempts to reconnect, questions about why you disappeared. And the difference is, this time you don't flinch when you see their name on the screen. You read the message calmly, take a breath, and choose. You're no longer someone waiting to be rescued. You're someone who already rescued themselves. This is where the game really turns, not because they're on their knees, but because you don't need them to be. You're not chasing revenge. You're chasing consistency. The silence that used to hurt has become a filter, keeping out what doesn't add to your life. What you would have accepted without question before, you now look at with new eyes. You're not opening the door just to fill a void. You're deciding if the person knocking deserves a place in the life you rebuilt. Your day-to-day starts to look like a well-tended garden. Where there used to be weeds of anxiety and need, now there are habits that actually nourish you, morning routines that give you direction, activities that recharge you, relationships that inspire instead of drain. Every sunrise is a chance to water those seeds. The difference is now you do it on purpose, not out of distraction but by choice. What's most striking is that this new equilibrium is magnetic. You don't have to prove you're okay anymore. People feel it in your energy, in how calm you sound, in the steadiness of your gaze. You stop settling for half respect or scraps of attention. You've learned to give your own time and presence the value they actually deserve. And that shift changes how people treat you every time. Getting here wasn't easy. There were long nights, urges that felt impossible to resist, tears nobody saw. But every minute of silence was an investment in yourself. Every impulse you held back was a brick in the fortress you built inside. Looking back now, you can even feel gratitude for the pain that brought you here, because without that fall, you'd never have found out what you're actually made of. This sets up the final scene of your journey. You're not the same person who started out begging for attention. You've become someone who learned to choose. The real victory isn't that they come looking for you, it's that you no longer need them to in order to feel whole. And what comes next isn't an ending. It's the start of a new chapter. One where you don't chase, you attract. One where you don't beg, you decide. This is the moment your story stops being about them and finally becomes about you. Look at where you are now. Remember where you started, checking your phone every 5 minutes, feeling like your worth hinged on whether that person responded. Think about the sleepless nights, the messages that never got an answer, the emptiness that made you question yourself. Now compare it to this moment. You're here breathing calmly, looking at the same silence that used to terrify you and feeling like it no longer owns you. That's victory. No contact wasn't easy. It wasn't a game you played to see if they'd react. It was a rite of passage. Every day you resisted the urge to break the silence was like forging steel, heat, pressure, and time turning raw metal into something unbreakable. You carry that steel in you now. The mind that used to tremble at every notification is now an unshakable mind. You learned how to choose, how to wait, how to let time work in your favor. What's happening on the other side is inevitable. They feel the gap, feel the missing attention, feel the weight of their own decision. Emotional reactance kicks in, and suddenly what once felt guaranteed no longer is. Every day you held the silence was a quiet reminder that you weren't going to keep playing the same role. And now when they come back, because eventually they do, You're not the same person who once waited with their heart in their hands. This is the moment you realize the real victory was never watching them beg, or getting that message you dreamed about for so many nights. The real victory is that you don't need it to feel whole anymore. Your dignity is restored, your presence is magnetic, your authority is calm. There's no anxiety in your breathing, no desperation in your eyes. Even if you decide to let them back in, it'll be from choice, not from lack. If this kind of pattern is exactly what you're trying to break, I left the affiliate link to What Men Secretly Want in the pinned comment. It's an ebook, with a bonus audio version included. It's not about going cold. It's about understanding what's actually going on in his mind when you stop chasing. And that's the whole second half of the ebook. Same link, pinned comment. What matters most is that this change doesn't just affect this one relationship. It touches every relationship after it. From here on, you won't trade your peace for a reply again. You won't chase someone who isn't chasing you. You've learned that every time you choose silence over reaction, you're choosing self-respect. And that changes how the whole world treats you. New people enter your life and feel that different energy, that steadiness that can't be faked. Here's the biggest paradox of all. The same silence that seemed to be pulling you away from them was actually what brought you back to yourself. You realize you weren't losing anyone. You were recovering your center. You built a fuller, richer, more conscious life. And it's from that fullness that you now get to decide who you share it with. This is the real game. Not waiting to be chosen, but choosing for yourself who earns a seat at your table. Take a second to really look at what you pulled off. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was emotional discipline, stoic, self-mastery, the courage to sit in the emptiness and let the pain reshape you. Not everyone has that strength. A lot of people break the silence after 2 days and slide right back into the same cycle. Not you. You held on. You crossed the desert and came out the other side, stronger, clearer, and more your own than you've ever been. Right now you've got 2 paths. Slide back into the old pattern or hold this new standard. Don't let this strength go to waste. Use it to build something bigger, a project, a personal goal, a version of yourself that doesn't just attract the people around you, but earns respect from anyone who crosses your path. This is your reset. I want you to keep going with me on this. Subscribe to the channel right now and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next video. Every week, we go deeper into Stoicism. In practice, no contact, emotional discipline, and inner growth, so you keep raising your standard for your own life. If something in this video hit home, leave a like so it reaches someone else who needs it, and share it with one person who needs to hear this today. And before you go, I want to hear from you. Type the word "reborn" in the comments. It's a marker of this process, of the chapter you just started. It's not just a word. It's a public declaration that you've chosen powerful silence and emotional freedom as your new path. You made it this far, and that says something about you. So take the next step. Subscribe, comment, share. Today you didn't just watch a video. Today your transformation started.